Welcome to the third step in painting grays and this cloud marsh. So in the first couple of videos we started with colors that would help describe the light conditions by using things like temperature, saturation, value, and then the choice of color based on those other three components. So we have to start with something, and we get down as much color, optimally we want to cover the canvas to start, which in this case I didn't quite get that far, but we really want to have everything down so that when we go to compare, which is what it's all about, we have the components down. We can't ever know for sure whether we've made a good choice or not until we've put it down on the canvas. So with some experience in painting, we get an idea what colors we should use and what we shouldn't. And one of the exercises in my online painting course that I encourage my students to do is a color wheel. And that is to actually paint a color wheel, because the exercise of thinking, seeing, physically painting all contribute to you really getting to know your colors. When you buy paint from the tube, it's going to come out as a red or a blue red, or same thing with greens and blues. So manganese, for example, can kind of go either way depending on how you're using it, but it leans a little more into a warm blue versus the French ultramarine, which is a more cool blue. So as we proceed, we then go into second notes, and our first choice that we made was a foundation with the idea of what colors we're going to put on top to then modify, because obviously this is a gray cloud, but if we just use black and white, then it's pretty dead in terms of color, and therefore is not a colorist version of an impressionist painting. So our goal is to really capture the color of light. We're not just capturing color and light, it's the color of light. So that's why paying close attention to what is around something, both in your reference and on your canvas, is key to getting things right. And we want to stay in the beginning stages to make sure our values, temperature, saturation, and color choice are accurate. In a case like this, we often are letting the painting dry before we go on to the next step. So in order for this to work, we need to re-wet our foundation color that we used. And when we start to progress to stages like we've gotten with the cloud mass in the top, then we're starting to sort of simultaneously add first and second notes to go into our third note, so that we're not just starting from scratch. From here, we're constantly comparing. You never are stopping the comparison part of it. You want to squint to make sure your values are accurate. So for example, as much as this cloud mass is in shadow, there is a huge difference between the actual cloud mass and the sky behind it in terms of value. So those kinds of things you want to be watching for before you get too carried away towards the finish. Unfortunately, a lot of students are in a hurry to finish a painting, and when I was learning this, we never finished a painting because it was all about the starts. If you didn't get your start right, then your painting wasn't going to accurately relay the light condition, which is what Monet was doing. He has the haystacks, for example, that he painted different times of day, different times of year, because the sun is in different places in the sky, and it affects how it shines on things, and therefore affects the colors that get portrayed or relayed or displayed, probably is the best word. And so that's what we're looking to do. We're trying to describe with paint. Now keep in mind too that paint or pigment is different than light. So we are trying to describe light with pigment. And it's totally doable, but it can be tricky. So it's really important to get to know your color components, because color out of the tube, can be warm or cool within a color category. And then knowing complementary colors. I mean, ask yourself, do you know what the complementary colors are? What are the secondary colors? These kinds of things are really important to know as you progress. When we start layering colors like I'm doing here, in most cases, you're going to try to match the value with your second and third note. Now, when we get into super dark colors like this, I have found it to be better to go just a teeny tad lighter, because you want your colors to show. You want your colors to lay on top and blend. So if your color, first of all, your starting note and your second and third notes are really dark, you're going to create a mud. So by going just a little lighter, so even here you can see that kind of blue-green overlay on that tree line on that magenta, because but yet at the same time it is dark enough. This is probably the darkest part, this under part of this bush, and maybe even that one, than any part of this painting. So it's appropriate to go as dark as you can, but you don't want it to be so dark that you're creating a black and you can't see the colors. You really want to see the colors. So, the object here is not to paint like this crazy color painting. It's about capturing the color of light. So you exaggerate the light with color at first, because our normal tendency is to go for dull. It's just natural for us to do that in the beginning. So we exaggerate those starting notes, and then as we build on them, it mutes down. It becomes more quote unquote real, and then you have a more exciting, colorful rendition of the light conditions of the subject at hand. So it's really important to get to know your colors in order to know how to layer them. And doing a color wheel by hand is a great exercise if you've never done that before. Also, a value chart. If you can do a value chart where you paint out your value scale at the top with black and white and then match your colors right out of the tube, that's another great exercise. But this is all things that I teach in my Paint the Color of Light course. I have a longer version and a shorter version, and it's pretty extensive and complete. And we go into some other things in the longer version, like drawing and composition and so on. But getting to know color, if you really love color and impressionist, colorful work, is key to creating the kind of paintings that you want to paint.